George, can you call to order?
Here. Colonel Evans?
Here.
Mr. Grozan?
Here.
Mrs. Ludwig?
Here.
Mr. Miko?
Here.
Mr. Naso?
Here.
All
So
present.
stand for the pledge. Pledge allegiance.
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
That brings us to district goals. At every board meeting, we discuss our district goals. So student achievement is number 1, followed by financial prudence, which is number 2, and community engagement is number 3. Every decision we make is focused on student achievement, and every financial goal we make is to drive student achievement, to maximize every tax dollar from every one of them that we get and try to get there. And we also rely on our community to help us, and that's called community engagement. And we engage the community to try to help us wherever we can to assist, and they do a lot of that, and we're very grateful for the community that helps us. With that, we'll move on to recognition. Any recognition?
No recognition tonight, Mr. Naso.
How about the superintendent's report?
Thank you, Mr. Naso. I do have a few items that I wanted to share, and I'll put something on the screen just to update for any folks that are here tonight or watching at home that would like to see what's going on in the district. As you know, we hold a board retreat every year. We held that in July. We take a look at the action steps that we're going to put forth underneath those goals you just mentioned of academic achievement and growth, financial prudence, and community engagement. So based on the work that we did together at the retreat and talking with our administrative team, we have finalized our action steps and our focus this year for our Strong Schools 2020 plan, which will be the last year of the plan. So if you're on our district website, strongnet.org, and if you just go to our district and superintendent, that will get you where you need to go, and you'll see our Strong Schools 2020 plan right there. So if you click on that link, you'll see two things. If you want to see how we did last year, the progress, I shared this in an August board meeting, but you can click on the image right here and you can see our annual report from last year, see how we progressed on the goals and objectives last year. If you want to see what's in store for this year's plan, you simply click on the graphic here. It will take you to our full plan, and you can go through and take a look at the action steps that we'll be putting into place this year in those 3 goals. So just wanted to share that that's done and up on the website for folks to see and to reference how we did last year and this year moving forward. And again, thank you to the board for their collaboration in July to provide valuable input and insight into where we're going as a district. So I just wanted to share that update with the community. While I'm on the website, I just wanted to highlight, Dan's been doing a great job of highlighting this in the Mustang Moments. But we still, if right on the main page, if you scroll down a little bit to shortcuts, the first link is Heard Around Town. That's our way to continue to communicate. If you hear things around town, want some answers, get some facts from the district, we respond to those every Monday. So if you just click on the link here, there'll be a form you could submit. You could submit the question anonymously and we'll answer it. Or if you'd like us to get back to you directly, we'll still post it on the website, but we'll email you the answer as well. So for example, this past week we had somebody ask, is there a Mustang Stampede race for the elementary kids? We answered that question, and I'll share a little bit more about that at our timely information. But this is a way that from the ease of your home, you can ask some questions of things that you may be hearing about what's going on in the district. We'll provide those answers so everybody can access the information. So I'd encourage everybody to submit any questions you have there. And then the last thing I wanted to update tonight is that this is the last year for our board-adopted school calendar. So it's that time of year, or that time again, where we start to look at the next 2-year cycle of the calendar. It's just as a reminder, that's a committee. It's representative of administrative staff, support staff, teaching staff, and parents. So we have committee membership finalized. My goal is to start meeting in the next couple weeks. And as a reminder, based on a law that was passed a little bit ago, once the calendar is done, we have to have a public hearing. That public hearing is at least 30 days prior to the board approving. So I can't give any estimates as to when we'll start that. It depends on how much depth or time the committee takes that we facilitate. But I would encourage, if anybody has any feedback, any community members or parents or board members on the calendar. Now would be a good time to submit those and share those. I've had one community member share with me some feedback on the calendar, and we've got that on the list to talk about with the committee. So our goal typically is after the first of the year, January, we would have official approval by the board for the 2020-21 and 21-22 calendars. And so that's what we're targeting again this year.
Excellent.
And that's my report for the community, unless there's any questions from the board.
No, I would just love to see us come back after Labor Day.
The calendar, I took a look at the calendar the next 2 years, just the way things fall, and we do have an agreement as a part of the Polaris districts that we would go back to having spring break after the Easter holiday. So that will be a change from our past calendars. All of the districts in the Polaris group agreed to make that change, so we were consistent. So with those changes and some other ways that the holidays fall, it's not an easy plug and paste of what we did the last couple of years. So we'll be working with the committee to work through those aspects. Any other questions or feedback?
Nope.
All right, that concludes my report.
All righty. Okay, that brings us to public comment. We do have 3 public comments today. I'll remind you that you have 3 minutes to discuss your topic. It's not a conversation, it's a comment. And please refrain from using any names of students, employees, or, in fact, board members. So the first one we have is Tracy Joniak on school board policy. Yes, it's down there. Please state your name, address.
Sure. Tracy Joniak, 12311 Cooper's Run. I'm here seeking clarification on several school board policies. Let's start with policy number 9700A, which reads, "It is the policy of the Board of Education that district facilities not be used promoting the interest of non-school organizations." The same policy goes on to state that the superintendent of schools must review and approve political postings, and that no such approval shall have the primary purpose of advancing the special interests of the proposing group. Last Friday night, before the first home football game, 2 massive banners greeted fans. But those banners were supporting a single incumbent school board candidate. When questioned, Dr. Riba said he had no knowledge of the banners prior to their placement. The fact that these banners have since been removed does not negate the impropriety of this action. Before anybody splits hairs, please notice the Federal Election Commission has determined that outdoor advertising falls under the guise and under the umbrella of political communications. The placement of these banners on school property without the express prior permission of the superintendent is a clear violation of policy 9700A. Additionally, it fails to honor agreed upon precedents set by this district in prior campaigns. Moving on to the content of the banner. One of the banners, as well as a print advertisement placed in the fall sports program, features SHS teacher and coach Lou Serino in a de facto, as defined by Cornell law, de facto endorsement of the school board candidate. I'd like then clarification of policy 3231, outside activities of staff. This policy reads, staff members may not campaign on school property during working hours on behalf of any political issue or candidate. Therefore, it is evident that a banner and an ad featuring a district employee campaigning for a candidate while on school grounds during their work hours is a violation of this policy. Moving on, I'd like to revisit the policy approved in a contentious debate on August 15th, which states requests for information or staff requests requiring significant time, effort, or cost must be directed through the board president. When Dr. Riba and Mr. Aganastu had to contact the school district's attorney to find out what could be done about placing political banners on property? Did that incur significant time, effort, or cost? If so, then what happens when the person who violates the policy is the school board president?
Thank you.
Can I ask a question?
Oh my God, I would be so happy, please. I'd love a question.
Are we having a political debate at the high school next week or the week after?
I have no idea. I have nothing to do with any of that. I'm talking about policies that already happened. That's the
Okay.
only, I don't have any information on anything other than what I found on our website. I could send you the links if you'd like it.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Jessica Koza, next. Please state your name, address.
My name is Jessica Koza, and my address is 9812 Hazelwood Avenue, 44149. I just want to answer your question, Mr. Grosjean. It is our PTA that is hosting a political candidates night panel. That might be what you're asking about, on October 15th at 7 p.m.
Is it at the high school?
It is at the high school. And I did review policies with Dr. Ryba, in fact, earlier today, to make sure that we are in compliance.
Perfect, thank you.
Moving on, I am also seeking clarification on school board policies, in particular to the bylaws under section 0123, Code of Ethics / Code of Conduct. There are 10 particular items I'd like to review with you. 5 in each section provides dates in which each of these items were possibly violated. Under 0123, under Code of Ethics, Section B, obey the laws of Ohio and the United States, which took place August 15th and September 13th. Section D, recognize that as an individual board member, I have no authority to speak or act for the board, also on August 15th. Section E, work with other members to establish effective board policies, also on August 15th. Section G, encourage ongoing communications among board members, the board, students, staff, and the community, August 15th and September 13th. And Section O, refrain from using my board position for benefit of myself, family members, or business associates, also on September 13th. And under Code of Conduct, Section A, abide by the Code of Ethics promulgated by the Ohio School Boards Association, August 15th and September 13th. Section D, keep the board's primary focus on the best interest of the students, August 15th. Section G, support the superintendent and help him / her to be as effective as possible, September 13th. Section K, become well-versed in preliminary procedure, August 15th. And last, Section L, listen carefully with courtesy when other people have the floor and are speaking during board meetings, which is frequently, particularly pertaining to August 15th. With this brought to light, I too would like to know what are the repercussions of these violations of a school board member. That's it.
Thank you. Pass that one down. Next, Michelle Bissell, comment on GPS systems, buses. State your name, address.
Hi, I'm Michelle Bissell, 21611 Fairfield Place. And I'm here tonight, as Mr. Naso said, to talk about school buses, particularly the GPS system that should come up for a vote today. And bear with me, I promise this comes around. At a candidate event recently, a moderator asked me what the school district and the Board of Education can do to assist in raising property values for the residents of Strongsville, a question that also came up a lot during the levy season. My answer to that question was to continue to draw new families to the community, just as it drew my family here. In order to continue to attract young families and other young people, SCS needs to offer opportunities and services that surrounding districts do not. And that's why I'm here today to ask you to approve the lease of the GPS system for our school buses as Dr. Ryba has proposed. North Ridgeville added a similar system in 2015, Brunswick in January 2016, Hudson and Cleveland in 2017, Medina installed theirs over the summer. Right now, we are behind the curve and playing catch-up. If we want to be a premier district in Northeast Ohio, we can't continue to play catch-up. We need to lead the way. We need to anticipate the next move in education and services and offer that to our students and community. That's why I'm also asking you to take a step further than the GPS system and begin a discussion considering seatbelts for newly purchased buses. As a parent in the district, I deal with the overcrowded school buses daily. I hear stories of children being pushed into the aisleways. I hear stories about buses so loud that drivers need whistles to get the attention of the students. I know drivers are frustrated and overwhelmed by behavior problems. And I understand that the newly installed cameras are designed to help with this, and we'll find out if that's gonna work. But in addition to the obvious safety value of the seat belts, it seems to me that the belts might also address overcrowding and behavior concerns and should be considered. We still have the opportunity to be a leader in the move towards seat belts, as only 2 districts in Ohio, Avon Lake and Beechwood, have begun buying buses with seat belts. Similarly, the STEM designation has been available to schools for over 10 years in the state of Ohio, and we do not have any school with this designation. However, in currently pursuing the newer STEAM designation, I believe Strongsville has begun the process in becoming a trailblazing district and asserting ourselves as a district of the future. I'm hopeful that the board will focus not only on the costs of new technology or curriculum or whatever the upcoming needs might be, but that the board will be creative in casting its vision and allocating resources to bring the vision to reality for the sake of families it serves. Raising the property value in the city would just be a wonderful byproduct. Thank you.
Hey, Michelle, I have a question for you. What, the GPS system, what do you see as the advantages, and why do you think that will attract people to the district?
I'm just saying the GPS system is something that we need to keep up with what's happening in the world around us.
But what's
So
the advantage? I mean,
what's the
I'm
advantage of the
struggling,
GPS
not
system?
struggling. I see that there's operational advantages, there's advantages to the parent, but to you, what do you think is why do you want the GPS system in the buses in Strongsville? I know that other districts are doing it, but I don't want to do.
Me personally?
Yeah. I'm just why you came up to make the comment on
I
it.
have a 9-year-old, a 7-year-old, and a 5-year-old who have been on buses that show up 35 to 45 minutes late. I'd like to be able to know without having to make a ton of calls. If I call the bus garage, they're like, wait a minute, I have to phone the person. And then I got to phone that person. And by 10 minutes later, I get the phone call back, oh, they'll be in your stop in 20 minutes. Well, sometimes, like today, I had a doctor's appointment I needed to get to. I need to know whether or not I have to somehow find that bus and get my children off of it, or if I, have time to wait it out. This has happened to me on more than one occasion. It also happened when my son was a kindergartner. He was the last student on the bus for 45 minutes. It concerns me as a parent that my 5-year-old's on the bus alone with a bus driver and I don't know where they are. That would help me address that safety concern as a parent.
And also too, you can track the bus.
Yeah.
I mean, the wonderful part about it is, as a parent, you can pop it on your phone, take a look at it, and then track that bus and see where it's actually at.
Yeah. No, I
So-
see a lot of I just was wondering what you were thinking. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciate the time. All right, that brings us to approval of minutes. Can I have a motion?
So moved.
Thank you, dude. Can I have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Jane. Any discussion on the August 1st, 6th, and 15th minutes? George, take roll.
Colonel Evans?
Yes.
Mrs. Ludwig?
Yes.
Mr. Miko?
Yes.
Mr. Naso?
Yes.
Mr. Grozan?
Yes.
Motion passes.
Voted for you. Treasurer's report?
Thank you, Mr. Naso. I have several items for your consideration tonight, along with, just 2 of those items are the fiscal year 20 permanent appropriations, moving from a temporary budget to an annual budget, and then also linking that to the 5-year forecast. So I have both to present, but before I get to those, the item A is the financial report for month ending July 31st, which can be found in Exhibit A. And then, now I'm gonna go to the podium for the presentation of the annual budget and 5-year forecast.
And George, before you start, I just want to thank you, because I know you've been working round the clock on this 5-year forecast. I know you've put in Saturdays, Sundays, very late night hours working on this, and I would hope that it wouldn't have to come to that, but I greatly appreciate the effort that you put in to get that done, so thank you.
I appreciate it, and where it comes from too, it's a timing. We had a lot of activity over the
Right.
summer with personnel, with staffing. So I was waiting for that to be completed, to have the final numbers for staffing, and then, when I do prepare the annual budget and the 5-year forecast, I do them together. I go line by line and also employee by employee, looking at where they are currently on the salary schedule, what their benefits are, and then forecasting them out for the next 5 years based on where they fall on the schedule, just so we have an accurate picture of where we are. And then also over the summer, I was meeting with the department heads and going through their budgets to see if there's anything, to ensure our budget aligns to our goals.
Right.
And that's getting to the next slide with, as Mr. Iva was mentioning, the goals that we have approved at the board retreat, or talked about the board retreat, and approved at the previous meeting. Our budget, our resources are aligned to the goals that we're focusing on this year. Academic achievement and growth, the action steps that we have listed below. I'm not going to go through them as we've covered them in meetings prior. Financial prudence and community engagement. For the annual budget, personnel trends, this is looking at all of our funds. We have the general fund, the main operating fund, but we also have other funds which pay salary and benefits, such as the food service fund, Title I, IDIB for special education. So overall, this year, we have total budgeted positions, 727.43 FTEs. That's down about 3 FTEs from fiscal year 19. Overall, of those 727, you can see 48% of them are teachers, and then another 16% are aides. So over half our staff is directly impacting the students, or with the students. Well, I should say in the classrooms, they're all impacting the students, directly or indirectly. Estimated resources, this is our beginning cash for each fund, plus any estimated resources for total resources. So overall, as a district, our total estimated resources for the year is about 147 million. The main operating fund is the general fund, which I'll get to in the forecast, but the estimated revenues are about 78.2 million with an unencumbered beginning cash balance of 30.9, which brings it to the total of 109. And then, as you can see, we have the other funds, or special revenue funds, which are mainly composed of our student activity fund, local grant funds, state grants, which start with the 400s, and the 500s are federal grants. And we have our debt service fund, which we receive tax dollars to pay the principal and the interest for the bond issue that we have for the renovations of the high school and construction of the middle school. Our capital projects fund, which is made up of our PI budget, which we receive the 1 mil PI maintenance fund that goes in there, and the expenses are paid from there. The building fund, which is the remaining proceeds of the bond fund. Then our enterprise funds, which is the food service, and the uniform school supplies, which is the fees that we charge for classroom materials. And lastly, the internal service funds, which are the main ones are our self-insurance fund, where money goes in from the district and from employees' contributions to pay the medical bills for the employees, as we're self-insured. And then also we have 2 fiduciary funds, which is the student managed student activities, and then the agency fund, which is the OSHA tournaments that we host, which is in and out. So those are the resources for the estimated resources, and on the next page is the annual appropriation for those individual funds as well. Overall, our total annual appropriation is 100.7 million for all those funds, of which 74.8 is the general fund. Carryover encumbrances from the year before, about 2.1 million, for a total appropriation of 102.9 million. Then the last, this next slide is just looking at the general fund. So the general fund appropriation is about 74.8 million. What I do is I break it down by function just to see how it's, where the money's going by function. So as you can see, the top line, instruction, this is regular instruction for the teachers, special education, the aides. You can see there, of our total annual budget, about 56% of the total budget is in those areas. And then the remaining is broken down in support services, extracurricular activities. We do have a small portion of debt in the general fund, and then transfers to other funds, which make up about 1%. So in total, our budgeted cost per pupil is about $13,362, and it's about $300 less than the previous year. So that kind of concludes the budget. Now I'm going to go into the forecast, but is there any questions before I go into the forecast?
I would like to see at some point on the, your breakdown at the top between regular, special, and vocational.
Mm-hmm.
I'd like to see pupil counts, if that's possible.
Okay.
I'd like to know the cost per pupil and the number that is impacted by those dollars.
Yeah, so the cost per pupil overall is on the far.
Not on the, I'm talking about the top line, where you see regular instruction, 29.5 million, special, 12.3. I'd like to see head count related to that.
Okay.
Or, I'd like, actually be interesting to see both. It'd be interesting to see the pupil count and the head count of employees that roll into those numbers.
Okay, I see what you mean. Okay, I can get that.
Thank you.
The five-year forecast is the contest, the major assumptions, general fund revenues, expenditures, and forecast summary. Actually, before I jump into the forecast, the one thing about the forecast is we do it twice a year, once in the fall and then update again in the spring. Previously, the law was to have it submitted to the state in October. I've always, since I've been here, we've been doing it in September because it aligns, because I link it to the annual budget. When I do the budget, I do them both together. This is what we have budgeted to spend. This is how, and it shows the impact of it. So the law changed for the fall to be filed in November. I still wanted to keep it linked with the annual budget as we're presenting the budget. It shows what we can afford and how it's going to impact our cash position over the next 5 years. So that's why I'm doing it now rather than doing it in November. The submission window opens in November, so when the time comes, I'll submit it at the appropriate deadline, so we're in compliance with the filing.
Thank you.
And then again, we'll update it in the spring. The spring is towards the end of our fiscal year, so I'll update it on how we're trending towards year end and start using it as a planning tool to begin the planning for fiscal year 21's budget. So major assumptions, revenues. Our biggest component of revenue is property taxes. And the two major impactors of property taxes are collection rate and calendar year split. Collection rate's pretty straightforward. They send out 100% of the bills. For residential, about 98% pay. Last year, this current collection in the fall was about 98.88%, slightly better than last year, slightly above the average. For the remaining forecasted years, I have it at the 5-year average. Residential collection split, what that is, our taxes are levied based on a calendar year. We receive them based on a fiscal year. The fiscal year overlaps 2 calendar years, so at times the collection split could vary, and we see that more on the commercial side and the residential side. Well, I apologize. The computer's starting to do an update. So I guess if either we can come back or I can just go off the slide.
Just go off the,
What's that? Oh, you can put on your.
You keep going and then I'll get it up.
Okay.
It was in your board update, right?
Yeah. Or here, if you have it easier, I have it on jump drive here.
Just keep going up.
Okay.
we're fine.
George, one question I have is, the mall is going to become a major problem for us.
Right.
And they're going to try to devalue that mall as best they can, notch by notch by notch.
Right.
What is our plan to combat that through legal assistance, through whatever it might be, but that mall is going to start to deregulate or to try to cheapen the value of that piece of property.
Right, so,
How are we going to combat that as time goes on?
so currently the mall's valued at 181 million. Every 3 years, just as any property owner, they could file a complaint with the Board of Revisions to decrease their value. And with that complaint, they go in front of the Board of Revisions and present evidence on why they should, on why they think their value is where it is. What I'm getting to is they've currently done that for this. They've currently filed a complaint, and we filed a counter complaint. And as you'll see later on my portion of the agenda, our attorney, David Seed, filed a counter complaint against them. But in order to do so, we need to have evidence to where we feel the value is isn't act to what the county currently is appraised. Right now, they're valued at $181,000. They filed a complaint to bring their value down to $135,000. If the Board of Revisions would grant them that decrease, we're looking at a potential loss of about $700,000 in annual revenue. So you'll see later, a portion of my agenda, where we're proposing to contract with an appraiser to appraise them all to find out what the value is, so we can take that evidence and present it to the Board of Revisions
Okay.
to combat their complaint.
I mean, the mall has become a sticky situation for this community. And unless we build a hotel or provide more outlets outside of the mall, we're gonna have to combat that for the next 10 years. So just stay sharp on it and keep going.
Yeah, it's something we got to continually look at, and
Yeah.
they did this in 2014 as well. When they had the opportunity, they filed a complaint to the Board of Revisions, and now the 3 years has expired, and they're doing it again. So
Okay,
it's something we continually monitor.
thank you.
And David Seed, the attorney we're using, is
Yeah, he's
focused. I mean,
he's fo-
I run into him downtown all the time.
Yeah,
He's
he's-
focused and on it.
He's focused, and he also and he has experience with malls.
Right.
He also works with Beechwood schools that is heavily involved in the mall out that way as well.
Thank you.
So what it also highlights that the relationship between the school and the city is there. The reality of it is some of this is just illegal. The owner of the property wants to lessen the value. The school district wants to keep it at the same value. The reality is the mall and retail is undergoing changes. And I don't want to forecast 5 or 10 years out, but the mall's ability to pay whatever the property tax rate is dependent on it being viable. And so it is incumbent on us to not just say, hey, we got to keep these property taxes, the property tax valuation where it's at. If the mall isn't making money, they can't pay the property tax, whatever the value is.
Yeah. And I know the mayor started a commission to look into that, and they've been meeting and coming up with ideas on how to revitalize the mall and how to do it. Fortunately, our mall is one of the stronger malls in the country and in the area. It's doing well, but, and that's something we can use in the negotiations. But I know that the city council, Matt's here, Matt Shonet's out here today, and I know that they're keenly focused on what can be done and how to make sure that thing stays viable, so.
And Kelly.
And Kelly.
And Kelly, oh, Kelly, didn't see you over there, I'm sorry. Hi,
I should
Kelly.
just tear Sears down and build a hotel. Sorry. That's
They're
just my-
figuring out.
That's my
They're
2
working on it.
cents.
But go ahead, continue.
The moving on the collection rate for the commercial property. This collection, compared to last collection, it's up by 4%, 95%. Last time it was skewed for the 91% due to a couple property exemptions that were later, properties were exempted. And then I'm forecasting the remaining years at 93.25, which is the 5-year average. The commercial is not as consistent as the residential. As you can see, it kind of fluctuates. So I feel the collection rate is, the 5-year average is our best estimate. And then for the collection split, it's it's starting to normalize. It's been inconsistent in the prior years, but in the past couple years, been a somewhat consistent trend. The first two bullet points is what I talked about on the collection split and the collection rate. And then the last two bullet points, fiscal year 20, I'm forecasting prior year delinquencies collected at 921,000. And then for fiscal years 21 to 24, I'm assuming 900,000 annually. And then for fiscal year 20, the refunds issued, I'm forecasting 547,000. And then for fiscal years 21 through 24, forecasting about 900,000 annually. Also, with the revenues is dependent on our tax base or property values, and currently our assessed valuation is at $1,625,000,000, where it says calendar year 19, and that's up about 10% from 18, which was due to the reappraisal. And then in November 2016, we had the 5-year 6 mil levy, which was approved. The collections began in 18, and the forecast assumes that the levy will expire in December 31, 2021, and collections will continue through December 31st, 2022. And then most recently, in May 2019, the residents approved a 5-year 5.9 mil levy, with collections beginning January of 2020. And the forecast assumes that the levy will expire December 31st, 2023, and collections will continue through December of 31st, 2024.
But we also saved the taxpayers a couple $1 million by getting a better evaluation by you guys going to Chicago, correct?
Correct. That was with the collections of the bond funds.
Mm-hmm.
So the impact of when we refunded our debt, we were able to refund it at, so it's like a credit rating. We were able to refund it at a better credit rating, which we got a lower interest rate. And because of that, we were able to generate savings of what our bond payments would be in the upcoming years.
Thank you.
Yep. General fund staffing. The one slide I had all staffing for the general fund. It's about 667 number of budgeted positions, which is 3 down from last year. The forecast assumes all union agreements as currently defined. And then for healthcare rates, in fiscal year 20, because we went to the consortium, we were able to capitalize on essentially a year and a half's worth, the premium staying the same. So we're going to see a 0 increase in fiscal year 20, and then in 7%, the forecast assumes a 7% increase in fiscal years 21 through 24. Just historically, in 16 we saw a 3% increase, 17 a 5% increase, 18 0, 19 7%. And then the forecast also assumes, which we have put in from the previous years, $500,000 additional for technology upgrades each year. General fund revenues, where the money comes from. Overall, general fund revenue, $78.2 million. The majority of it, 72.3%, coming from property taxes. And then also the state of Ohio reimbursements, which is the homestead and rollback, another 8%. So directly 80% coming from property taxes. And then state foundation is made up of 12%. And then other revenues such as interest, catastrophic costs, Medicare, tuition, pay to play make up the remaining. Property taxes, as you can see, it's going to be up this year because of the in January, which we'll receive 1/2 during the fiscal year. 2020, the new levy will start to be collected. Then in 2021, we have the full year, where it drops off in 23 to 24 is the renewal levy starting to come off. But if you assume that they were there, those graphs would be flat across the top. So when I submit the forecast, I have to submit it with the levies coming off and then putting them towards the bottom, as we'll see at the end. State foundation revenue, the biennium passed in end of June. What they did was they kept the state funding frozen from the previous year, so we'll receive the same amount that we've been receiving, plus they added an additional wellness dollars of about $145,000 for us this year, and then $262,000 next year. Then additional with casino revenue, which in total, it brings us to about $10,048,000. Then the following year, be at $10,133,000 in total state aid. State homestead and rollback, those been consistent from year to year, estimating 6.2 million this year, and then 6.4 the following year. Other revenue, the biggest chunk is the TIF, estimating 2.6 million. Last year we collected about 3.6, 1 million of which was the settlement that we received from the Cleveland Clinic, so that's why it's a decrease this year. This number's also continue to go up. In prior years I was forecasting 2.1, and it's been continuing to go up, so I've increased it to 2.6 to where it was last year.
And the Cleveland Clinic, because they were gonna split that payment over
They-
over their calendar year, their fiscal year, and so but we collected both sides of that, right?
We did.
Okay.
It was actually, no, their fiscal year, I believe, was on a calendar year basis.
Okay,
So they split it over 2 fiscal years
okay,
for them, which was 1 fiscal year for us.
okay,
So we received it at the end of December and at the end of June.
okay. I just wanna make sure, I knew they were making 2 payments, I wanna make sure we got them both.
We did.
Okay.
Expenditures, where the money goes, of the total $74.8 million budget, 80% is salaries and benefits. And as we've been saying in the previous years, that's the benchmark that we've been shooting for, is about 80%, where in years past, almost a decade ago, we're in the 90%. And because of that, if 90% of your budget's budgeted towards personnel, it doesn't leave room for anything else. And we feel 80% is a good benchmark, and again, that's where we ended up this year. And the remaining 12.1%, or $9 million, is purchase services. Materials supplies 3.1%, or $2.2 million. Equipment, $1 million, or 1.4%. Then the other objects, about $2.4 million. Salaries, from 19 to 20, it's about a 3% increase. Various factors go into it. It's our step and column movements, our negotiated contract agreements, and then in the following years, the agreements currently as they stand. Healthcare benefits, estimating about 17.4 million for fiscal year 2020, which is slightly up from the previous year of 16.7, and the increase is primarily due to STRS and SCRS and the Medicaid, which is tied to a percentage of salary, and then also healthcare, which is slightly going up, although there was not a premium payment. The premiums were for a calendar year, so it looks higher from 19 to 20 because half of 19 had a lower premium. The first half had a lower premium. The second half is the premium that we're at now. So it's just getting those caught up. Purchase services. Annual budget, estimating $9 million, which is about $1 million higher than the 8 from the previous year. The biggest chunks of purchase services are tuition payments to other districts or other places. We have our settlements of $1.2 million, open enrollment about $150,000, community school deduction of $1.3 million, the CCP about $320,000, Ed Choice about $520,000, and then also utilities about $1.5 million, and then
George, does the utility rates in your assumption, did you include that we converted the one school to gas over the summer?
yeah, what I did, I took the 4%. So I took so that was converted the previous summer.
Previous summer?
Yeah, so we had 1 year under us, so I took the actuals for this year,
So you're gonna use the actuals, okay.
and I increased
So
it
it
by
reflects
4%. And I increased it by 4% each year
Okay.
as an estimate. Materials and supplies, estimated about 2.3 million. Last year we spent 1.7 million. The biggest difference is the textbooks. Last year we spent about 300,000 in textbooks. This year our budget's 700,000. Last year, we held off on purchase of implementing some new textbooks due to where we stood with the levy as part of the round one reductions, or phase one reductions.
George, where do the CCP textbooks fall in line? Is that with the textbooks, or is that in a different all
No,
other
that's with,
category?
that's with the textbooks.
Okay.
And that's anywhere between 30,000 to 50,000
Oh.
a year. And then other objects make up about 2.4 million, which is down from the previous year. And the reason it's down from last year is due to the transfers and advances. As you can see in 18, we didn't have any transfers, which was a timing. They were double. We did them in July rather than June, so it looks like they were doubled up in fiscal year 19. And then the other components of other objects are county auditor fees, which is a percentage of the tax collections. It's about 937,000. Our audit fees of 50,000. Insurance, insurance for our vehicles of 131,000, and then banking fees of 22,000. Then overall, our general fund summary. I have two summaries. One, this summary here includes the levies coming off, the renewal levies coming off from the revenues and being included on the bottom. But just for consistency, I have the next slide, which houses those with the revenues, so we can see where we truly stand. Over under with the addition of the new levy, we're looking to bring in 3.3 million revenue above expenses, which would help with our reserve as we go in the out years when we begin to, where our expenses begin to catch up with our revenues. That was part of our plan with the levy to get us 10 years out. So as you could see, with the renewals remaining consistent, that'll get us to where we had planned. So that concludes my presentation. If there's any questions.
Great
Nope.
job.
Great
George.
job, as always. While I'm up here, I might as well just finish the rest of my agenda. Please. We just move on. A grant approval.
Hey, George?
Yes.
If you don't mind, excuse me. I do have a comment, Mr. Naso and Board. A comment was made earlier in the week, I think it was this last week, might have been earlier on another debate for candidates, that you don't need business people on the school board because you should have educators on the school board. And I just wanted to point out, and I have a personal agenda on this, but we do have educators on with the school board, and that's our superintendent, assistant superintendent, who are in on every aspect of the operation. Where business people come in handy is there. And another comment was made that the schools are not a business. Well, they really are in a lot of ways. The end product is our students that are career or college ready and ready to go in the best way and the most, in a way that is affordable to our community. And so it does help to have business people on the board that understand spreadsheets and balance sheets and can do the things that have been done over the last several years that George has been able to accomplish, like the increase in the Moody's credit rating, like the refinancing of idle funds, I'll call them, funds, anticipated spending on funds that were never put into interest-bearing accounts that they could have been to add additional revenue for the district to use, and for personnel negotiations that work out to the advantage of not only the educators in the district, but also to the district itself. So I just wanted to let that out there for everybody to hear that, yeah, it does benefit the community to have people with a business background on the board.
Thanks. Item D, grant approval. This is an ODNR grant for Step Outside. Jeff Martinelli, PE teacher at the middle school, had applied for this. As if you recall from years past, with the same program, he applied for archery equipment. So this is another grant to keep that I won't say keep the program, but he applied for it to continue to purchase needed supplies for the archery program that he does at the middle school.
Does a great job of getting these grants every year.
He does, he's,
Right on target.
Student activity program budgets, purpose and goals for fiscal year 20, which is found in Exhibit D. Again, this is one that was approved back in June, but I had updated it based on, as I was doing the budget, as we had final cash numbers for those funds to appropriately account for them in the appropriation. Tax rate resolution, which can be found in Exhibit E. Again, this is one that we typically approve in March. It's for the county, for them to levy taxes for the next collection year. Ours needs to be updated due to the passage of issue 4 back in May. So the county just sent it to us recently to update with a new millage. If approved, I need to send it back to the fiscal officer so he can levy those taxes. Item G is an invoice order approval for maintenance of the high school planetarium with Ash Enterprises International of $3,900. And then lastly, as I mentioned earlier, the appraisal firm, Samuel Kuhn and Associates, and this is to provide an appraisal of South Park Mall in order to allow our attorney David C. to use that in his counter complaint with as he presents evidence to the Cuyahoga County Board of Revisions. And his price is $25,000 for the renewal. Again, he did this work back in 2014, and his price then was $30,000. So it is $5,000 cheaper this time around.
Good job.
And with that, that concludes my report. If there's
If I could
questions.
make a comment, we're extremely fortunate to have a planetarium in our high school. It is one of the neatest places in that entire building. For the company to come out and just do proper maintenance on the piece of equipment, it's still a mechanical piece of equipment. It is needed to have the sharpest of images, to have the proper maintenance done on that piece of equipment. And it is a magnificent piece of equipment. I mean, it's a really neat space for that building. And I think all of our young children will enjoy it. And, but yeah, I definitely would recommend the $3,900 to just have that maintenance done on that beautiful piece.
It's amazing.
It is, it's a
We
wonderful
re-
spot.
We rebuilt the room during the renovation, and we had it all
Yep.
reworked, and it wasn't
Yep.
operational, and now it is. And just gotta do the proper maintenance.
The kids see stuff.
Instead of having wooden benches, remember that, Jane?
Yeah, they're comfortable benches now, and the planetarium's always open in the spring during the high school science fair. So
Yes.
everyone can see it for themselves come the spring.
Thank you, Jane.
Thank you. Thank you, George.
Thank you.
Brings us back to superintendent's report.
Thank you, Carl. Under timely information, it is that time of year where we have parent-teacher conferences, so it's an important aspect of what we do to partner with our parents in the education of their children. So the dates are up on the board, and I know our principals have been updating our parents through the weekly newsletters that they send out. But we'll start the first week of October with high school and middle school, and as you can see, on October 3rd, middle school continues, but we bring preschool and elementary conferences. And then the following week, we have a day of high school and then preschool and elementary finish up. And this has been the pattern for the last handful of years, but all of these days, schools are in session. Conferences happen after the end of the school day, and check with your building principal's newsletter to see the schedule and how you sign up and the structure for conferences at your building. And we invite all of our parents to come on in and partner with us as we support your children through their pathways in our school district. This Saturday, we're excited. We've got a great event. It's the Cross Country Invitational. It's a huge event that happens at the high school. If you go there, you'll see the track, or not the track, but the pathway. What do we call it, Laura? Course. Thank you. The course is painted, ready to go. It's a huge event. If you've never been there, I mean, we've got schools from all over that come there. But before that, there's a free event for kids in kindergarten through 6th grade. For a fun run. So registration starts around 8:30. The run will start at 8:45. at Packatan Stadium, and the Invitational starts at 10 a.m. So we invite everybody this Saturday, the 21st, whether you come out and see the high school athletes compete or you participate in the fun run, come on out. Weather looks great and looks like a great Saturday afternoon. Just moving on, October 11th, just a reminder, that is a non-school day, so the district will not be open. And then Friday, October 25th is our first early release day this year. And mark your calendars for our annual greet and treat. Every year it's gotten bigger and better, and you know, it's just a great event for our community and for our kids, and we appreciate the spot committee that puts that on. Jenny and Dan take the lead in that, so we appreciate their efforts and the efforts of all the volunteers. But at the middle school, 6 p.m. to 7:30 p.m., come in. Jenny, I know we've done donations in the past. Is that the same this year?
Yeah, so the only cost is a non-perishable food item for the food bank, Strongsville Food Bank, or a monetary donation would be accepted. And Dan and I have been working hard to create a new entryway in so that we don't have such a long line outside. So we're going to recreate that so people can get in and get their candy as soon as possible.
And then if you want to see what's going on with all of our athletes, whether middle school or high school, check out strongsvilleathletics.org and come out and support our student athletes. And I know we put it in a press release recently, but I just want to publicly thank the athletic boosters for providing the funding necessary so our students can come support their classmates free of charge for all athletic contests, excluding football and boys basketball. So thank you to the boosters for doing that. And it's been great to see as I've gone to some of the events, the student crowds have been phenomenal. So I know that's important to our athletes. Keep coming out and cheering on your peers. And lastly, Friday, tomorrow, is Military Appreciation Night at the football game at the high school. So veterans or active duty service people can get in free of charge with their ID. And if you haven't seen already, we had it in the post, and thank you for putting it in the post. Dan's put it in our Mustang Moments, but there is a link. We would like to recognize our active duty servicemen and women and our veterans on the big scoreboard throughout the game. So there's a link to put, the service, the armed service you served in, your rank, time, your years, and we'd love to help honor and recognize you for the service that you've done on behalf of your country and all of us on September 20th. So hope to see everybody out at the football game and our other sporting events throughout the fall. And with that, that ends timely information, unless there's any other timely information that we need to talk about right now.
Nope, good.
All right. Then now it's time for our monthly updates from the department. So first up is Steve Bruckner with the Business Service Report. Steve?
Good evening, everyone. The first item on the agenda for business services is bus routes and stops. Be resolved upon the recommendation of the superintendent that all bus routes and bus stops be presented by the Transportation Department for the 2019-2020 school year be approved, and that the operations manager and the supervisor of transportation be authorized to adjust the routes and stops as necessary during the school year. The second item is a lease of GPS system for school buses. Be resolved upon the recommendation of the superintendent that the Board of Education approves the lease of a GPS system from Synovia Solutions LLC at the total quoted price of $31,407 per year for 5 years. Funding to be from the Permanent Improvement Fund.
So moved.
Can I have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Duke. First was by George, the motion was by George, second was by Duke. Discussion, let's talk.
Steve, will Synovia Solutions LLC provide us with an app to be able to track that bus?
It is included in the quoted price. The name of the app is Here Comes the Bus. So that will be released. I don't want to overpromise and underdeliver. I can just say that as soon as I'm able to get this purchased, I'll be working with the company to get these installed as soon as possible and do some do all the work necessary to make that app available to parents as soon as possible so that we can have that in parents' hands, so they can have the information much quicker than they have right now, much more
Okay.
quickly than they have right now.
And the 31.5 covers all the costs, right? Installation and everything, the rental of the services, et cetera, for the whole year.
Yes, sir.
And calendar or fiscal year?
I wanna say fiscal, but
Okay.
I could accidentally lie to you and actually mean calendar.
I mean to blindside me, just wondered, because George was sticking in my head.
Yeah, they're guaranteed, and all the equipment's guaranteed for 5 years, so, and you would see in that Exhibit F, we also get 2%, so we get a couple units that we don't have to wait if a unit goes down. It's a plug and play. When the harness and the hardware is all installed by the company, our mechanics, if there is some mechanical failure, can go and insert that other system. We send that back to Synovia and they replace that free of charge, so we always have stock on the equipment in case there is some kind of failure, so there's never a disruption in service.
What kind of turnaround time, if we approve this tonight, how quickly is it going to be installed in the buses?
Oh, man. So what the salesman is telling me is that if we can get it approved, he's looking at a 4-week install. 4 weeks from the beginning of install to the end so that we can start rolling out to parents. But now I've promised, so I have to deliver, so thank you, James.
Can we prioritize the elementaries first?
Okay.
And, you know, speaking, I think somewhat logically, the service and the GPS is going to be a bigger benefit to our parents with elementary school aged children. You know, the more you go in the high school, the more varied your comings and goings are, and the kids are driving. But at the elementary level, primarily, all the students are on the bus. So if we
Agreed.
have the option to prioritize, I think it makes sense to prioritize and roll it out to the elementaries first.
I agree. The route buses, as we term them now in the business, they'll be the priority moving forward into the spare buses because, you know, those are used on a basis as well. And it does include all the maintenance vehicles, the school van, the box truck. All company vehicles will have this installed on them. No, it won't be, here come the maintenance truck in the app. But that will be included so that we can use our data and our ability as far as the management and the maintenance piece will be available for the white fleet.
Is this also available for non-Strongsville City School students that, like, are parochial students? Are those families going to have access to this GPS?
My understanding is when we load them into the system, any student that's on our buses, the parents will have access to.
Okay.
So there's unlimited access. With the Here Comes the Bus app, there's no per license fee. It's unlimited. It's just the accounts that we create. And I won't so go as far as to promise this, but I think that there is a portal that parents are going to be able to access and help create their accounts to help populate into that program.
Okay, are we going to work with the principals of those other schools to make them aware of this, or how are we going to roll that out? Okay.
Yeah, that would be communication from myself to them, and we can do that definitely.
But to get the app, you have to have a child on the bus, correct?
Yeah, you would.
You couldn't just download the app and start tracking our buses, correct?
No,
Okay.
no.
I think, I know we chuckle at the thought, but we do have a safety imperative, and we would,
Yes.
you know, it would be terribly unfortunate for someone to take advantage of that. It is, you know, it is the
Yeah,
children that we have to be
absolutely,
worried about.
correct.
So, the service or the ability will be great, but it also puts a burden on us to make sure that it's being used properly, and make sure that, you know, as things change, if people's access needs to be removed, that's gonna, you know, we're gonna have that dimension also, because the same way with Naviance, we have protection orders that we have to follow, et cetera. We now have that issue with this system also. Steve, the lease, at the end of the lease, do we buy out the hardware, or do we release the hardware? How's that, what's the language on that?
We would release the hardware and then enter into another agreement if we so choose to stay with the company.
Okay.
The reality of it is, in an undetermined amount of years, there is a cellular component to this. I mean, that's what the GPS is linking to. So
Right.
as you see the advertisements, everybody's now coming out with the version 5. Eventually, we're going to have it where these components are outdated and they'll be updated. It is part of the lease that if that was to happen, now technology doesn't happen that fast in this realm, that it's, you know, cut off and then you can't use it anymore. it's fully anticipated that we'll be able to use these versions of GPSs for the duration of the 5 years. But if something does happen, it is covered under the terms of the lease that we would get that upgrade as a part of it.
Yeah, that's the advantage of leasing this technology as opposed to purchasing it, but.
Correct.
So I've got, are you done, Richard? You have no more questions?
The only other question is to just comment and say that, you know, on the one hand, the merits alone are there, but I think it's important that we recognize that these kinds of tools are what families have come to expect. I mean,
Correct.
I can go to Skip the Dishes or Grubhub or whatever, and I can be on my phone and I can watch my McDonald's as it drives to my house. When I get an Uber or a Lyft, I can see the car approaching. So I think it's becoming more and more what young parents expect. If I can see where my Uber driver is, why can't I see where my children are on the bus? So I think it's good that we're doing this.
I've got a question in that. Could just give to me the operational benefits of this package. And I know there's a benefit to having parents, and I think that's wonderful, and I'm all in it for that. But I'd like to hear some operational benefits to you that maybe even result in savings in one way or another in the operation of the bus fleet.
So one of the operational pieces is the maintenance piece. With this and what we've purchased, there'll be sensors that are installed in a harness that let us know key components are actually tied into the bus computers. And I'm not in the maintenance department, but I know that there's more than just one. It's all tied into the computers. It will update us as events are starting to happen on that bus in the mechanical realm, so we can catch them early enough. Sometimes warning lights go off, and depending on the nature of the repair, sometimes they do not. But either way, it's always reported back to the computer. This will allow us some better diagnostic tools in real time to allow for our maintenance crew to even be more effective than they are right now. So that's from the maintenance side. From the operational side, there is a standpoint of some efficiency that we can instill in this. So as we see and has bus routes sometimes need to be adjusted. What looks good on paper at the beginning of the year, August 13th, September 13th is not feasible any longer. Especially, just to pull a hypothetical, there's construction somewhere in town that's causing a lot of delays. This will allow us to, on the fly, make some decisions to get the routes to be more efficient. It will also allow us to see simple things that may be happening by maybe some habits that are not good. If we have buses that are sitting idle for too long, it will send up some warnings, and that will allow us to have those conversations with real data to say we need to adjust some habits that will help. I think that will help us operationally be more effective and mechanically to be more effective. The system ties that all together.
Speeding, hard braking.
Okay, thank you.
I just wanted to address something Michelle asked before about the seatbelts. We've had presentations on the board from a gentleman who's very interested in that. We're very interested in it. It was kind of cost prohibitive for a while to retrofit all the buses, but we certainly are looking at that, and anything we can do to enhance the safety for the kids, safety and security, primary thing, and so that we're looking at that as well.
Excellent. Any other discussion? George, take roll.
Mr. Grozan?
Yes.
Colonel Evans?
Yes.
Mrs. Ludwig?
Yes.
Mr. Miko?
Yes.
Mr. Naso?
Yes.
Motion passes.
The third item on the.
See you in 4 weeks.
Yeah, clock's running.
I know.
I skip the third item. I get started.
You got me going right now.
I'm going to call the salesman right after the meeting here. The third item is gifts, and I'll read through the gifts that are given to the district. The Strongsville Athletic Boosters donated $2,100 to the Strongsville High School volleyball team student activities account to be used for the upcoming season as needed. The Strongsville Athletic Boosters donated $118 to the Strongsville High School football cheerleaders student activities account to be used for the upcoming season as needed. The Strongsville Athletic Boosters donated $4,936.50 to the Strongsville High School baseball team student activities account to be used for the upcoming season as needed. Kiwanis Club of Strongsville donated miscellaneous school supplies valued at approximately $700 to be used by students in the elementary schools in the district. St. Joseph Catholic Church donated miscellaneous school supplies and two $25 Walmart gift cards to Whitney Elementary School. And Sue Reber donated miscellaneous containers, markers, and school glue to Sarar Elementary School Makerspace.
Excellent. Thank you.
Thank you, Steve. With our curriculum report this month, Aaron, Kirk.
Thank you. Good evening. Tonight I have two items for your consideration. The first item is entering into an interdistrict service area contract with the Educational Service Center of Northeast Ohio for the 1920 school year, as shown in Exhibit G. And the second item tonight is a memorandum of understanding for our Ohio online learning program, which is also through the Educational Service Center of Northeast Ohio and is found in Exhibit H.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Aaron. With Student Services, Andy?
Good evening, members of the board. Two items for you tonight. One is to enter into an agreement with the United Cerebral Palsy Association of Greater Cleveland for the special education-related services for placement of a student with disabilities during the 1920 school year in the amount of $54,400 per Exhibit I. And the second item is a settlement resolution.
Can I have a motion?
So moved.
Thank you, George.
Second.
Thank you, Duke. Any discussion? We all got the update today from Cameron and from Andy. And I think, does anybody have any questions that they can ask? Or need to ask?
No.
George? Jane?
No, I'm good.
Okay. George, take roll, please.
Mr. Grozan?
Yes.
Colonel Evans?
Yes.
Mrs. Ludwig?
Yes.
Mr. Miko?
Yes.
Mr. Naso?
Yes.
Motion passes.
Nice job with that.
With the Human Resource Report, Jenny?
Under Human Resources this evening, I have the following items for your consideration. Under E1, the resignation of a non-certificated staff. Under E2, retirements of certificated staff. Under E3, the appointment of a non-certificated staff, and appointments for home instruction tutors, testing consultants, certificated substitutes, non-certificated substitutes, appointment of a certificated supplemental. Under E4, changes in hours for non-certificated staff. Under E5, changes in status for non-certificated staff. Change in status for temporary non-certificated staff. Under E6, changes in salary for certificated staff members. Under E7, a stipend for kindergarten screening, a stipend for teacher base team coach, and a stipend for a technology coach. Under E8, contract recommendations for non-certificated staff. Under E9, medical leaves for certificated staff, medical leave for leadership, medical leaves for non-certificated staff. Under E10, unpaid leaves for non-certificated staff. And under E11, we have our volunteer chaperones and mentors. And that concludes my report.
Thank you.
There are no items under technology, so that concludes my report.
All right. That brings us to Richard, report on Polaris.
I'm happy to report that construction is almost done. Every day, the construction company turns over a new not a new building, but a new classroom to the school. School started on time, it opened on time. Everybody's been very courteous to each other as the construction finishes. And I'd like to announce that on October 16th, from noon to 5 p.m., we're having a community day at Polaris Career Center, and it's kind of like an open house. Construction won't be completely done until October, but the majority is done. And so anybody in the community who wants to come and see the new construction, noon to 5 on October 16th. And I'm happy to report to the seniors that they don't have to go to school at that time because the community will be there. So they get a day off to do lots of homework. And then moving on to legislation, if I may.
Please.
The legislature is getting back to work for the next session. House Bill 305 is going to be the topic of discussion. That is the Cupp-Patterson report. There is a lot of momentum for that. There was a lot of mention just about 2 weeks ago There's a gentleman by the name of Dr. Howard Fleeter, who is a economist. He is employed by the Ohio Education Tax Institute, and he's been doing Ohio funding research for the last 30 years. And he analyzed the current legislation as it stands and said that while it moves in the right direction and addresses some of the issues, the money is still lacking, and he estimates that the bill is still $1.5 billion short on how much should be in new funding for education, which should be, it is a big number. It should shock everyone, but what it does indicate is that we still need to be vigilant and pay attention. When you have a situation with Peter and Paul, you usually take the money from Peter and give it to Paul. And in this situation, Strongsville is considered to be Peter. So we'll keep on paying attention and continue to advocate for what we believe is correct. And that completes my report.
Thank you. Brings us to board liaison reports. Jane, you want to talk about city council? or
Oh,
Duke?
yes, city council, thank you. They had a meeting on Monday, and they started off by highlighting the Economic Development Committee, and specifically, the Business Network Breakfast is coming up on September 26th. It's at 7 a.m. at the Ehrenfeld Recreation Center. And the guest speaker is Holly Persy, who will be speaking about medicine and what is her exact title here? What is her exact thing going to be speaking about? I don't know. Kelly, you're going to be there. What do you remember what her exact topic is? Oh, all right. Kelly Kosick is the city council person that's in charge of that committee. But I actually graduated high school with Holly Persy. She was our valedictorian, so it should be a very enlightening speech. And then we have, you had mentioned the mall, and Jim Carbone chairs the Retail Advisory Board, which is made up of citizens and other community members that are dealing with tackling the issues of the mall. So it's very much on City Council's radar. You had mentioned that earlier. There's also several projects that they had on for first reading concerning TIFs for developments that have been in the city over the last several months. And the TIF is something you had mentioned in our budgeting. So it's something where the owner pays 100% of their property tax, and a portion of it comes back to the city in the way of making sure they have infrastructure and other roads or areas that need to be addressed in relationship to that development. So that's first reading. There's 4 of those. And yeah, go ahead.
And we receive that portion. The city makes sure that the school district is kept full.
Yes.
And we receive exactly what we're entitled to. It just comes into it. When we receive it on our tax settlement, it does get broken out into a different bucket and received differently.
Right. And then they also had a ordinance that they're going to be addressing how pergolas and other structures need to be addressed for homeowners. So if you're interested in that, it's at the Planning Committee. And then that concludes what happened at City Council.
You want to go on to PTA or student? and
I was
student
not
team?
at PTA. I don't know. Did you attend the PTA? Is Laura
I did not, but
here or
Laura, can you stand up and give us some insight?
Here, go to the microphone.
Laura, if you can come to the
yeah.
microphone. Thank you.
Otherwise, nobody will hear you.
Sorry.
Thank you for being there, though. Be kind. It's a nice shirt.
I spent my day with some preschoolers today. Just to remind everybody, tomorrow night is Sarar night at the football game, so all the elementary kids get into the game for free, correct? Yeah, well,
The
yes.
children do.
Yes, the children do. So, and then the PTA at Sarar on Saturday is doing a closet clean out, so if you missed the cheerleading one last month, you can go to Sarar this Saturday from 9 to 11 to donate clothing and household items, and they get a portion of that back as a fundraiser. Rockin' at the Rec, our next dance is not until November. And the other big thing that's going on is Volley for Miles, and that is on October 3rd. That's at the high school. It is the Strongsville girls volleyball team versus Elyria volleyball. And they are raising money for the Miles Memorial Fund.
Oh, wow.
So they want to fill the gym with yellow, everyone wear their yellow shirts. There will be a serving contest, raffle baskets, bake sale, 50/50, and a concession stand. So that's all I have.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Student achievement, Jane?
Okay, great. You know, every month, the Ohio School Board Association puts out a brief, so to speak, on topics that schools board should think about implementing or developing in their school district. And this month, it was about teaching growth mindset boost test scores. And the idea is if students are given more challenging questions than they're normally expected to have, it trains their mind to be able to process more complicated problems. And it was the most extensive study they had done, 12,500 students from across 65 schools. And so we don't want to have students have a rigid mindset that I can't learn it, and just to be able to challenge themselves. So, and I think our district probably does a really good job with that, because we have very good growth in our students. But so that's just something that they wanted to have some discussion about. I don't know if anyone has any thoughts about.
Well, I think our Mustang mindset covers that pretty
Right.
well.
Mm-hmm.
And Jenny put together.
So that's our student achievement brief for this week.
Thank you. Cameron, did you go to Strongsville Education?
I wasn't not able to attend this
I think
time.
it was just a phone call for one purpose, so I don't think it was. Okay, so that brings us to board committee reports. There was none of the committees met. We do have a finance committee meeting on October 15th coming up. There's no policy meeting scheduled. The next facilities is September 26th, and the next business advisory committee meeting is November 1st. That brings us to the consent calendar. All items with an asterisk are approved in a single vote. Can I have a motion?
So moved.
Thank you, George.
Second.
Thank you, Duke. Any discussion on any, we didn't have any modifications tonight, so with that, George, take roll.
Mr. Grozan?
Yes.
Colonel Evans?
Yes.
Mrs. Ludwig?
Yes.
Mr. Miko?
Yes.
Mr. Naso?
Yes.
Motion passes.
Brings us to the Board of Education Other. Start at that end. Got anything down there?
I do. I wanted to remind everyone that Harvest Festival in the Strongsville Historical Society is September 28th and 29th from 11 a.m. to 5 p.m. So it's free to the public. All of the houses will be there. We'll have demonstrators. And the theme this year is focusing on World War II. So it kind of ties in with our Veterans Day tomorrow at the football game. And the cow pie starts at noon on Sunday. So if you purchase a cow pie ticket, come and see what happens.
All right. Richard?
The car raffle for a new 2019 Chevy Trax is ongoing. The car will, or the winner will be drawn at the homecoming game on October 4th. You can see an athlete, any Strongsville athlete should have tickets, so make sure to get your ticket while you can. There are only 3,000, so if you buy one ticket, you have a 1 in 3,000 chance of winning that car. If you buy two, you double your chance. So buy them now.
Okay.
If I could, the Strongsville Rotary is holding at Petiti's the Taste of Strongsville. And the Taste of Strongsville is a wonderful event where you have individual restaurants providing small pieces of food, and you can just go to one vendor to another vendor and go to, but it's October 3rd. The event is probably, 6 o'clock, 7 o'clock, something of that nature. And it's a wonderful event. So it is something fun to do. All money raised for the event goes to the food bank. So all that money goes right to the food bank. We don't accept any monetary fund from that. So It's a wonderful event. It's something that if you haven't been to, please go and you'll have a really great time.
It is a lot of fun. Coincidentally, our school board meeting is on the 2nd, the day before, so it'll move to a Wednesday.
Yes. So, but it's a wonderful event, so thank you guys.
Duke?
Wanted to bring up a topic that's very important, and it's been in the news a lot lately, and that is vaping, and the dangers of vaping with our kids. I'd like to ask the superintendent to get with the staff and see if our policies on prevention and discipline for offenders are commensurate with the danger posed by the vaping. There's been over 700 cases of illness and 7 or 8 deaths reported, 9 deaths reported. There's a lot of our, I won't say a lot, but there's several middle school kids that get into it. The marketing, of course, is aimed at the children. It's terrible because they put the flavored stuff in there, whatever. And there's a lot of bootleg materials out there as well. Some of the things that vaping leads to is addiction, behavioral issues, lung problems, poisoning, injuries, seizures.
Bad teeth.
Teeth and gum rot, as Carl always talks about, anxiety, money issues that could lead to criminal activity, getting money to buy these things, because they aren't cheap, especially like some of these jewel things and some of those other ones. It can stunt brain development, and it can cause memory and attention loss. So I would like to see if I think this should be treated as the same, at least the same as alcohol in terms of our discipline, and if there's any, Steve, if there's any devices we can put into the schools, in the restrooms in particular, that would aid the administration in discovering if there's somebody that's in there vaping, which is a lot of the times the kids are hiding and doing this stuff. I think we need to be very strong about it and very proactive about it, and it's not because I want to necessarily nail anybody for it. I'm just trying to prevent, or think we should all be trying to prevent the death or illness of any of our students because of a bad habit. We all know that smoking's bad for us, even though some people choose to do it. If you're an adult and you choose to harm yourself, that's not a good thing, but it's your choice. It's a free country. If it's one of our kids and they're in our schools, they really don't have a choice about it, and I think our city's right in line with that, with the ordinances I've seen that are coming up. And Kelly, if they aren't looking at the vaping side of it, I would think that we would be, but
They passed a vaping ordinance.
yeah.
the vaping
Yes.
ordinance has already been
Yeah.
approved in April.
You can't,
It's completely illegal in Strongsville
Yeah.
to sell it to children of them.
Well, I happen to go to a barber shop that's right next to the vaping shop on Pearl, and I've been absolutely floored, concerned, and disgusted by the number of kids I see that go in there. And so, in my opinion, that, you know, that merchant probably needs to be spoken to, if not monitored more closely. But I think it's a big issue. I don't want it to get out of hand in our city, because our kids are too precious. So, that would be my request to you, Cameron, is that you would take it on and take a look with your staff and see what you think is appropriate, and let us know at another meeting coming up
Does
here.
everybody think that's a good idea?
We have an incident with a student with a vaping. Do you confiscate the e-cigarette or whatever it is, or do we get the police involved, just in a general?
So yes, if there's an issue with vaping in the schools, whatever it is whatever their device they're using is confiscated. Now that we have the city ordinance, it's a part of our procedure that the students are cited as a part of, we give our consequence, and because we have an SRO in the middle school and the high school, it's immediate that they're cited. And through the progressive discipline, there's a progressive discipline plan at each of the levels. So that's how it works right now.
So I'd like to highlight, I don't remember what school district, it might have been Mentor, but there's an Ohio school district that recently bought vaping detection hardware. It's not inexpensive, but that district felt it was, the problem was larger.
Revere, I
Was
think.
it Revere?
It was Revere, yeah.
The other thing that I'd like to suggest is that we look at it holistically along with alcohol and along with drug abuse. We do have we have an existing vaping problem at both the middle schools and the high schools, and we're addressing them, but we always need to see how to address them better. bringing attention to it is important, but I'd like to see it not just compartmentalized. I'd like to see that we're doing it all. You know, I assume our DARE program is updating its education on vaping, et cetera. But at the end of the day, right now, it's, you know, it's the thing that marketers are targeting children for. So I think it makes sense for us to approach it. I'd like to suggest at the beginning, let's know how we're dealing with it now. And then we've already had the discussion about drug testing. I think we do this all together. I don't think we should do them as separate events. There was my memory doesn't fail me, it was Hudson that was in the news recently, and they have a student drug testing program. It's voluntary, but the students sign up for it, and it takes the peer pressure off of it. If I'm in the program, I can't try whatever you're trying to get me to try, because I've signed up for drug testing to keep myself clean. And I think that's, as a parent, I think that's part of the problem, is the peer pressure and so on. The anecdotal is, you know, one student saying, try it, and the other student who you would never expect to do it, well, I don't want to be made fun of, I'm going to try it. So I think we need to give tools to do that, but that's what I would like to see.
I tend to agree with you, Richard. I just don't want to see it bogged down in a comprehensive policy that takes 6 months rather than getting something done on this sooner, because, like you said, I don't want to see one kid get harmed by this in our city. And, you know, some parents may not even realize one Juul pod can be equal to, in terms of nicotine, 20 cigarettes in one Juul pod if a kid's smoking that.
There was just a big arrest today. I saw it on the news this morning. A bunch of Juul stuff coming over the border from Mexico into Arizona, or somewhere there was a big arrest in Arizona. I don't know exactly where the origin of
A lot of it is bootleg, and a lot of it's
but
really
a lot
bad.
of it had THC in it and other things, and it was all, I mean, it was like, it looked like your typical drug bust. I mean, there was vaping equipment and machine guns and scruffy looking people. And so it's more than just
There's
something you
definitely a
buy
criminal element
to it,
involved
for sure.
with it.
So, I mean, I would like to see a review of the penalties to maybe move it in line with alcohol, and then consider the detectors, see if that's possible or how those work, and then, as Richard said, ultimately incorporate this thing into the thing. But maybe we can speed up this first part of it and move through that, if everyone's in agreement on that.
I think we are.
Okay.
Okay.
That's all I had.
All right.
Then I appreciate military night tomorrow night.
That's gonna be great.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to seeing the uniforms.
Me too. That brings us to meeting notices.
Mr. Naso,
yeah.
are we going to discuss the signs? We're in public session. It was brought up at public comment. I will start by saying that this is one of those moments where I consider Carl my friend, and I will always consider him my friend. But the actions diminished all of us, and I think it is incumbent on us to discuss it. It is incumbent on us to discuss it, not just privately, but at a public meeting. We should discuss whether we need to adjust our policy, or what our response, if any, is gonna be as a board, but simply not address it in public as a mistake.
Okay, I thought you were gonna bring it up when you brought it up in other, but you didn't, so. Start? You wanna start? Jane, start down there. Do you have any comments? We'll work our way down.
I'm gonna reserve my comments for later.
You gonna reserve your comments for
Yeah,
later?
I'm just,
Well, I'll start. So I do think it was a mistake. I do think the sign said best is the standard, and I don't think it held us to that standard. I think it put,
It's a football reference for Clemson football.
I apologize for misinterpreting the reference. But at the end of the day, we had what I believe was a policy, and we discussed it, you and I, Carl, and you felt that there wasn't. I think it was, if we do not discuss it, whether we're going to allow it or not, that vacuum puts us in a poor place, and it certainly puts Cameron and George in a poor place. I thought our conflict of interest policy covered it. And I quote, "These guidelines are not intended to be all-inclusive, nor to substitute for good judgment on the part of all employees, officers, and agents." And I think this is an example of where we lead by example. To have the political signs at our football game, during a football game, was a mistake and it was wrong. But we now have a vacuum of whether we have a policy to address it or not.
There is a vacuum, okay, there is. Before the signs went up, I made sure that there was no policy against those signs, and there isn't. I made sure that there wasn't a Ohio Revised Code against putting the signs up, and there wasn't. I conferred with the Board of Elections, and there was no policy against it, okay? All that work was further confirmed by our attorney when someone requested that Cameron talked. He sent a memo out today saying there are some policies that some people are inferring to imply that they prohibited that, but none of them were ultimately determined to apply. Cameron's memo said that clearly, and that came straight from our attorneys. So there was no policy violation, there was no board policy, there was no Ohio Revised Code policy, there was no Board of Election policy. So there was no policy against putting up those signs. I get it. I know you constantly make this, you've made the point, there was a de facto policy that we hadn't done that. De facto means in practice. So in practice, nobody hung up signs on there. But that just means in practice. That doesn't mean in law. There's another concept, de jure. That means in writing or in law. There was no law prohibiting this whatsoever, and that's the way it is. There is, and that was confirmed, Cameron, correct, by our attorney?
When I conferred with our attorney on Friday evening, when I was informed the signs went up, his report to me was that there was nothing legally or in policy that gave me the authority to take the signs down.
Exactly. Now, that comes to this next point. I took the signs down. They were up for the tailgate party and the tailgate party only. They're down, they're not going back up. I am not opposed to putting into a policy tonight, if we'd like, that would prohibit such things being hung up. But the very fact that we have to consider to put a policy up confirms the fact that there is no policy on those signs. There might have been a practice, and there might have been a gentleman's agreement that there wasn't done. But I knew when I put those signs up that there would be 5 people who would be angry. And I knew, and I got tons of texts and compliments on those signs. A lot of people liked them. I knew there would be 5 people who didn't like them. One of them spoke tonight, 2 of them are to my left, and one of them is not here. So I knew that, and I don't think it's coincidental that all the people who objected, either one, have a personal vendetta against myself or are political candidates running. That being said, I am 100% okay with installing a policy tonight. And I think Cameron circulated 3 of them, and I believe Duke brought an interim policy. What I'd really like to see is we put in a policy tonight to prevent it, so we don't have a problem, so it doesn't happen again. And then we circulate that policy through your committee, the policy committee, to then review and improve, make the corrections, and then we could put it in place in that manner, where we do the first reading, second reading, third reading. But if, the Duke has a policy that he brought, Cameron circulated 3, I'm 100% okay if we take a vote and put those in.
You want to go down, or you want to just have the conversation
Are you
between the 2 of us?
unreserved at this point?
Well, I'd just like to know, so you didn't ask anyone's permission. You just took it upon yourself to place these signs.
I asked our treasurer about rules and policies regarding signs.
That wasn't the question. Did you ask permission specifically to place these signs up at the stadium?
No.
So is it your contention that no one needs to ever ask permission to place a sign up at the stadium?
Currently, there is no policy against it.
So I could put up a no to Carl Naso sign, and
You
that
could.
would be fine.
You could. If we don't pass the policy tonight, I guess you could. There's no policy.
Then how come a couple years ago, when another candidate had a sign up at the stadium, they were told they had to take it down.
I'm not aware of that situation. I don't know who that was. I don't know. I wasn't there. I wasn't part of this decision. I can tell you there's no, like we said, the lawyers have confirmed there's no policy. I think tonight we should put a policy in. I'm all for that. But by doing that, that admits that there wasn't one. And I'm okay, I looked at it, I put it up, I knew a couple of people, I knew the 4 or 5 people who'd be angry about it, but it,
And why did you think we'd be angry? What would make it angry if it was so okay to do?
I would say, I don't know. I don't know why you'd be angry. I guess they'd be, because I beat them to the punch, because I put something up and I had a marketing decision that, that they didn't think of. And then I took them down.
So why did you take them down if they're so okay?
Because, Jane, I'm not gonna go back and forth on this.
Well,
I'm just telling you, they went up for the tailgate, they came down as soon, my intention was to put them up for the tailgate. As soon as the game was over on Saturday, because the game got delayed, I took them down. That's it. I didn't want them up all the time. I just wanted to take them down. They're my signs. I put them up, I took them down.
If I
Please.
may, when I understood earlier today that there might be some controversy about this tonight, I took it upon myself, after we all read Cameron's emails, I took Bill Pebble's proposed policy and I made some adjustments to it. And the reason I did is because as long as I've lived here, which is certainly not as long as Jane, you lived your whole life here, and Richard, I've been here 22 years. I can remember, and maybe others in here know it, we've always had candidates out in front of the stadium. I can remember when the mayoral races several years ago, there was somebody standing out in front that's still on the council, handing out candy, saying vote for X, and there's always been people politely standing out in front because there are limited forums in Strongsville for a candidate to get their face out there and their name out there and their policies out there. Especially, I think Michelle might agree with that, and so might the other candidates. Laura might agree with that. That you have a hard time if you're a new person trying to get into elected office. It's very difficult to get the face time with the community so that they know you and they know your positions.
I remember Jack Schroth out there, I remember Southworth out there, I
Yeah,
remember Gordon
there was
Short's been out there.
Lots of people out in front of
Right.
the stadium, and I honestly don't see a problem with that as long as it's done in a non-intrusive, polite manner. And so what I proposed in here, and I'll read it for everybody here I put a new paragraph in. I kept Pebble's policy pretty much the same. I deleted item C in there about, I can't remember what that was about, but I also changed the one about the images of the districts. I limited it to saying you can't use images of the district or the students because we already have policies on student pictures and things. But as far as board members go, hell, we're out there all the time anyway. Our pictures are on TV, and the employees, that's up to them. They have First Amendment rights as well. But in paragraph D, I said, and this is subject to editing, of course, and I'll explain that in a second, but additionally, the board may permit limited self-promotional or informational activities by candidates for political office on district property, providing the activities are conducted only outside of athletic venues and away from buildings. Examples include standing outside of a stadium gate wearing a promotional shirt, vote for me, or handing out promotional or informational materials to attendees that request them on their way into the venue. No signs may be attached to any district facility, and event attendees may not be harassed or actively solicited by any candidate or surrogate. Violators will be prohibited from any further activities on district property until permission is reinstated by a majority of the board. The rest of the policy proposed by the lawyer stays the same. And I propose this as an interim policy with the intention that it then goes to the policy committee for further review and careful consideration. That this would just be an interim policy for now, and you guys can massage it and bring it back to the whole board for discussion and adoption. So I'll pass a copy of that down to you and to Jane and to Carl, because he hadn't seen this either. on to, I can't get my fingers on it, George. Here's one for Jenny and Cameron. And then Dawn, if you need one for the record, I got extra here. So that would be my proposal, that we would adopt this, which would put some, I think, reasonable restrictions on it and be with the spirit and intent of what we were talking about. So I'll turn it back over to you guys for consideration.
I mean, I read Pebble's policy, and I didn't really have, with the exception of a couple of things which seem to be taken out of this, I didn't have any problems with it. So, and if you feel, there certainly is a hole, and if we want to plug it, we can plug it tonight, and then we can run it through the policy, which you control, Richard, or you sit on, and you could run it through your process, make it better, make your additions and your changes, and we can go from there.
I think that the policy that we need, I just think that Richard needs to review this policy, read it through, and then go for the first reading, second reading, and third reading. That's just my opinion.
So the policy, is it strictly to political campaigns?
What do you mean?
This policy from Bill Pebble? No, it addresses
Because-
both political and non-political
Because, I
advertising.
mean, what we're arguing about is that if, at this point in time, if the vape shop wanted to put a sign up on our property, it sounds like we're arguing that we couldn't take the vape shop sign down.
We
No,
couldn't
that's
have-
not true.
We couldn't have last week. There was no policy to
We
stop it.
still have no policy, so they
We have a
better
policy
hurry.
right here.
They better hurry and do it
Richard,
tomorrow.
That's
That's
not
not, hang on,
So-
hang on, that's not true. In the policy Pebble gave us, it covers.
No, what I'm saying is
advertisement
until we
and
pass this
promotions.
policy, the vape shop can put a sign up and we can't stop them. And that just seems
But
silly.
the city
Oh.
has asked that any type of vaping, any type of, that type of material, that you can't advertise
Okay, it's
on
a-
school
okay,
property.
It's a different example. We'll move on.
This
my-
covers
my-
both.
Good.
Richard, this covers
Good,
both.
it covers both. Carl, it was a cheap political stunt. It remains a cheap political stunt. And for us to pass that policy, which we should, becomes hypocritical because it's after the fact. So we got that one sign in and you waited until 2 hours before the game started. You planned it. You could have shown board president's leadership and discussed it ahead of time, but you planned it. And I ask that in the future you do better for us as a board, for our community. This has damaged the goodwill of our community.
I don't believe it has, Richard.
I know you
think you're
don't.
making way more of this than there is, but
Because
I will make a commitment that I will follow all board policies and
And I
all
will
Ohio
make-
Revised Code.
and I think
and
our way-
all education, and all
I think
Board of Education.
this is a board
Tracy.
meeting. This is a board
Tracy,
meeting. It's not back and
This
forth.
is about the board members.
Okay, continue,
So-
Richard.
So what I think is our way forward is we are in an election and the voter ultimately will decide.
Absolutely.
And I don't need a policy to do or not do. I won't put up signs on Pat Catan Stadium. Pat Catan paid a lot of money for our community to have that stadium, and he paid to have his father's name memorialized. And Mr. Serpentini paid a lot of money for our students to have that facility, and he paid to put his name on it.
And
All
the-
the people, all the other people paid to put their name on it. I leave it at that. I think going forward, after the election, we can come back with a policy. Until then, I challenge every candidate to act with their conscience and show the public what they mean and what kind of person they are.
So you're not interested in the interim policy?
No, it's hypocritical. But we can vote on it, and I will support the will of the board.
Then how about reviewing what Duke has offered and come back next Wednesday and just review it with your additions and your corrections?
We would have to call a public meeting of the policy committee.
I think he's talking
And-
about the next board meeting, which is a Wednesday.
Oh, he said, I thought
He
he
said
said.
next
October
Wednesday.
2nd. My bad,
But-
my bad.
But
My
let's,
bad.
then
We
let's
can-
do a policy meeting and just work the policy.
We can do the policy meeting, which is fine, and I'm happy to do it, but this is in the proper domain of the board as a whole.
It's fine. I just want to finish with I broke no rules, I broke no laws, I broke no policies. I hung up 2 banners during a tailgate party and promptly took them down. And I don't think making this kind of a hullabaloo about a couple of banners, but whatever. I'm in. I'm in for the policy, I'm in for that. I won't put them back up on the stadium.
Thank you.
No, I think it should go through the policy committee,
Okay.
and I think that, that Richard should, and Jane should, work the policy to whatever they require, and that information should be brought back to the board.
Okay, that's the
That's
will
my
of the board.
opinion.
We won't vote on the policy.
Okay.
All right. Next meeting will be October 2nd. October 2nd is a Wednesday, so just make note of it, it's a Wednesday. It's been moved from Thursday to Wednesday, right here at 7:30. The one after that will be Thursday, October 17th, 7 o'clock, right here as always. Do we have need for executive session?
I'd like to have executive session on the topic of discipline of an employee and negotiations.
Can I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Thank you, George, take roll.
Mrs. Ludwig?
Yes.
Mr. Grozan?
Yes.
Mr. Miko?
Yes.
Mr. Naso?
Yes.
And Colonel Evans?
Yes.
Enter an executive session at 9 o'clock?
No.
8:55?
8:55.
Mr. Naso, before we break for executive session, just so I'm clear on what was decided, am I to schedule a policy meeting before our October 2nd board meeting?
Yes,
Is that,
yes.
because we will not have need for the rest of the policy, will not be ready by that point. So we're going to have a special policy meeting in the interim, be ready to talk about it at the October 2nd meeting.
I'm available at any time.
Okay. I just want to be clear on the direction we would need to go. Thank you.
All right, thank you.
8:55, executive session.
Sounds like a plan.